Infinity Redux by midnightwolf2192, Chapter 3. The weeks passed by quickly for Peter and his new support crew, otherwise known as the Spider Cluster, as per MJ. Betty had set up an official Spider-Man Twitter account that was steadily gaining popularity. It had jumped up in numbers when Peter had started sending Betty pictures from his perspective. His photo taken from the top of the Empire State Building had been trending for days. Cindy had been helping him improve his web fluid and even managed to get a ballistic-grade Kevlar from her uncle, who was a producer of police equipment. She had told him it was for a school project and he had agreed wholeheartedly. He even told her to call him if she needed any more. Abe had taken the Kevlar and had transformed it into a brand new suit. He and Ned had worked together to ensure that Peter had communications equipment incorporated into the suit, allowing for him to remain in contact with his team while he was on patrol. The only missing thing was Karen, but that wouldn't happen until he met Mr. Stark. "Alright, Spidey, can you hear us?" MJ's voice came through his earpiece and Peter grinned. "Yeah, Dahlia, loud and clear," Peter replied. After the cluster had been formed, the group decided they all needed nicknames, code names. It would insist that no one could track them down if they overheard Peter speaking while fighting or patrolling. So with this in mind, MJ became known as Dahlia, Ned was Merlin, guy in the chair was a hell of a mouthful while trying to talk over the comms, Sally was Activewear, Betty was known as Whisper, Cindy was Doc, and Abe was named Stitch. "Doc, I'm trying out web combination Epsilon 8, just for the record." "Copy that, Spidey. Let me know how it feels when you're done," Cindy said. Peter nodded before firing a web at a nearby building and swinging away. As he patrolled, his team chatted in his ear. Betty was filling the group in on the latest Twitter stats, and when Peter felt his spider sense go off. "Spidey, check in. Your vitals have gone a bit weird." Ned's voice down the line broke Peter out of his daze. "Sorry guys, Spidey sense was triggered." Peter explained. "Merlin, can you check police scanners in the area, please?" "Stand by," Ned said. Peter could hear him typing frantically for a minute before he spoke again. "Police are blocking the entrance on both sides of the Queensboro Bridge. Something is happening on 59th Street side." "Copy. Do we have any more details on what's happening?" Peter asked. "Looks like two Chitauri weapons. Avengers are on their way," MJ said, and Peter tensed. "Spidey, I'm sure they can handle it. You have to decide whether or not you want to be on their radar." Before Peter could answer, his tattoo warmed and Mind started speaking to him. "You should go, Peter," Mind said softly. "Much of the Chitauri's power comes from offshoots of power. Plus, this is more than just Chitauri. The weapons are in the hands of Hydra agents." "Dahlia, I'll just help with crowd control. Queens is all right for now," Peter explained as he started swinging with greater speed. "I'll try to keep my distance." "Be careful, Spidey," MJ said firmly. The comms fell silent so that Peter could concentrate on his swinging. It took some time, but soon enough he found himself landing on a building on 61st Street. "Looks like they're blocked up a grid encompassing most of Upper East Side," Peter commented to his team. "Can confirm," Betty commented. "Twitter users are saying armed men are roaming Lenox Hill. Police are trying to contain civilians, but even with the Avengers they are struggling." "Copy that, Whisper," Peter replied. He swung off towards Lenox Hill and was instantly thrown into the chaos. He started helping direct civilians out of the line of fire when NYPD officer noticed him and came racing over. "You're the spider guy, right? From Queens?" he asked as Peter helped a mother and her two children. "Yes, sir. Queens' friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Heard you were having some problems and figured out I could help with civilian control," Peter said respectfully. "Any help would be appreciated," the officer said. Both Peter and the officer ducked as an explosion from above sent bits of building flying everywhere. "Be safe." Peter saluted the man before swinging off to help more civilians. He swung around a building and noticed the Hydra agents. They were dressed in black and each was carrying a Chitauri weapon. "Merlin, start recording. I want to analyze their tactics later. I want also to analyze my own responses," Peter asked, and once Ned confirmed, he started recording. Peter started webbing up civilians and moving them out of harm's way again. "Be careful, Peter," Power spoke this time. "The agents are becoming more desperate. They are starting to fire indiscriminately at targets. They are hoping to distract the Avengers." Reality chimed in. "They think if they start targeting civilians, the Avengers will give up." Peter didn't say anything, knowing his team would hear and question him. Instead, he swung towards another woman. He landed near a sobbing woman and knelt beside her. "Come on, ma'am. Time to get somewhere safe." Peter said, "I can't. My little girl. We got separated." The woman sobbed. Peter's head shot up and he began searching the streets for a little girl. "Please, her name is Claire. I can't leave her." "Okay, ma'am. Stay here. I'll find her," Peter said, attempting to comfort the woman. "What was she wearing?" "Purple shorts and a white top," the woman replied. Peter jumped to his feet and climbed over the overturned car the woman had been hiding behind. "Spidey, insurgents headed your way. Clear out of there," MJ hissed down the comms. Peter swung down the street and headed snapping left and right, trying to find the child. "Copy, Delilah. Gotta find a missing kid first," Peter replied. He stopped near an alley where he heard some soft sniffling. Turning, Peter slowly approached the noise. "Claire, is that you?" A small body emerged from behind a dumpster, and Peter knelt down. She had a few scrapes and cuts, but was otherwise unharmed. "Hi, I'm Spider-Man. Your mum sent me to come and find you," Peter said softly. The girl nodded, and once she was close enough, Peter picked her up and put her on his hip. "Let's get you ladies out of here." Peter turned, and after firing a web, swung out of the alley. When he arrived back at the woman, she smiled and grabbed her daughter and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Spider-Man," the girl said as her mum kissed her head repeatedly. "Time to go, ladies," Peter said. The mother stood and Peter was following them out of the street when an explosion followed by a scream happened behind them. Turning his head sharply, Peter noticed that Hydra agents had appeared and had fired up one of the rooftops. A body could be seen falling with alarming speed from the now destroyed roof. Without thought, Peter fired a web and launched himself across the street. He grabbed the falling body mid-swing and, using his momentum, made his way across one of the other rooftops. The Hydra agents turned their attention to him and Peter ducked to avoid their fire. "Spidey, tried web combination Lambda 4. Cindy ordered down the comms. "Fire at insurgents using that combination." Peter pressed the button on his new web shooters and changed the combination, as Cindy ordered. He fired at the agents and they re-aimed their weapons. The web shot out of the shooters and upon impact exploded. The Hydra agents were covered in webs and stuck to the ground, completely incapacitated. "Web grenades! Awesome job, Doc," Peter praised before a groan drew his attention. The person he had grabbed was lying on the roof beside him, and Peter gasped as the body rolled over. He had to stop to gasp properly. "Guys, I think the Avengers may become aware of me." Laying in front of him, bleeding from a head wound, a wound on his side, and with what looked to be a dislocated shoulder, was Clint Hawkeye Barton. "Can't be helped now. Spidey, provide basic first aid and then get out of there," MJ ordered. "Web his arm to his chest to stop it moving and to stabilize the dislocation. Use web combination Z8 on the wound on his side. The head wound looks superficial from here." "Copy that, Dahlia," Peter replied. He was in the process of switching his web combination when Hawkeye groaned and opened his eyes. "Whoa, settle down, man. You've got some bad wounds. I need to stabilize them before you can move." "What?" Hawkeye murmured. He looked over at Peter and frowned. "Who are you?" "Just a friend," Peter murmured. He held his hand up and looked Hawkeye in the eye. "I have to web your arm to your chest. You have a dislocated shoulder. And until you can get it set properly, we need to stabilize. But this is going to hurt." "Can't hurt any more than it does now," Clint said. Peter nodded and without warning fired the web at the limb. Clint let out a cry of pain and as was jostled, but soon enough Peter was done. "Tell me that stuff isn't organic." "That's beyond gross," Peter said with a smirk. He remembered when Falcon had asked him the same thing and it also made him laugh. "I've got to web your side too. I'll leave the dissolving solution with you so your medical team can get to the wounds. Nothing in these webs is toxic, so you'll have no infections or anything." "What the heck?" Clint bellowed as Peter fired Z8 at Clint's side. Sorry, Peter said over the yelling. "All done now. You should call your team. Let them know the insurgents and weapons have been neutralized, and let them know you're injured." "You're gonna hang around? Team would probably want to meet and debrief you," Clint said, hissing as his side ached. "Not today, man." Peter replied. He could hear MJ and the others in his ear telling him to get moving. Here are the dissolving solutions for the webs. Good luck, Hawkeye. Before Hawkeye could say anything more, Peter saluted him and swung away. It took him 20 minutes of swinging before he reached Cindy's place. The team had spent the last few weeks revitalizing Cindy's garden shed lab into a sort of headquarters for them. Cindy had explained to her parents that they wanted a place to study where they could also watch movies and study without Cindy's little brother interrupting them. Her parents had helped her expand the shed, and soon enough they had an entire lair set up. Ned had promptly named it The Web, and MJ had simply rolled her eyes. How were the webs tonight? Cindy asked as Peter removed his mask when he entered the shed. Awesome! Epsilon 8 is a huge improvement on 7, much more tensile strength and a good swinging capacity. You might have to keep that one for a while, Peter replied. He handed his web shooters with a grin. Lambert of 4 worked perfectly as well. Last I saw, those insurgents weren't going anywhere. Just what I wanted to hear. I'll work on a surplus of those so we have them if needed, Cindy said. She walked over to her bench and put one of the web shooters in their holders. Pete, I've got that footage you wanted, Ned said, handing Peter a flash drive. Looks like they were well trained, not the usual folks hanging around New York. You ripped my suit, Spidey, Abe said, and Peter looked down. Sure enough, there was a rip across the side and back of the suit. Probably from some debris. Sorry, Stitch, Peter said. He pulled off the shirt and handed the material to Abe. Abe rolled his eyes fondly and took back the suit. Peter walked over to where he had his bag of spare clothes and quickly got changed. Good job tonight, Pete, Betty said from where she was sitting by her computer. The Avengers are trending on Twitter, but you're also pretty popular tonight. Keep an eye on that, Whisper. We want to make sure the Avengers aren't asking too many questions, MJ ordered, and the other girl nodded. Peter dropped down into one of the beanbags and looked around at his team. He couldn't have asked for a better support group or a better group of friends. He grinned at Sally as she threw a blanket over him and patted him on the head. The Avengers. How's Clint? Tony asked as Nat and the team hovered outside the medbay. Helen said he will be fine. Apparently whatever that spider guy used to stop the bleeding worked well. It's also keeping his arm firmly stabilized, so there wasn't further damage, Nat explained. Who is this guy? Steve asked, and everyone looked over at Tony. Known as Spider-Man, works out of Queens, Tony explained as he typed on his stock pad. He handed the tablet to Steve so he could see the footage he had had. Started wearing off some kind of horrid onesie, but has since upgraded. Swings around Queens and takes care of the little things, rescuing cats from trees and helping old ladies cross streets. Seems like he does some other things as well, Bruce commented as he looked over Steve's shoulder. The current video playing was of Spider-Man rescuing a busload of children from falling off the Queensboro Bridge. And he saved Clint. He didn't need to get involved on this side of the bridge, but he did. We need to thank him, Nat put in. The others nodded, and everyone turned as Pepper entered the room. Pep, can you release a statement thanking Spider-Man for helping out, please? Tony asked, and the redhead nodded. Tell everyone that Clint will be fine thanks to his intervention. Can do, Pep said. I'll organise a press conference for tomorrow. The Avengers nodded at Pepper before sitting down to wait for Helen to come out of surgery. The next day, with the spider cluster. Oh my god, guys! Betty said excitedly as she dropped her tray onto the lunch table. Abe, Ned and Peter looked up from where they were assembling a Lego X-Wing. MJ looked up from her book, and Cindy and Sally paused their conversation to look over at the excited team. Miss Potts had a press conference this morning! You've got to see this! Betty pulled out her phone on the table and pressed play on the video she had open. The Avengers have asked me to give a statement regarding the events of last night. They are pleased to announce that there were no civilian casualties and the men in question have been taken into custody. They would also like me to reassure everyone that Hawkeye is making a speedy recovery from his wounds received during the fight. Thanks to the diligent work of Dr. Helen Cho, his wounds are healing well, and he should be back on his feet within the next few days, Pepper said, reading from a teleprompter. I wondered who they would have working on him. Interesting that it's Dr. Cho. Her work is groundbreaking, Cindy said, and Betty eagerly shushed her. The Avengers have also asked me to relay their extreme gratitude to Queens' local hero, Spider-Man. It was due to his involvement that Hawkeye is recovering as well as he is. Spider-Man helped to safely neutralize the threat from last night and was able to administer field first aid to Hawkeye. This ensured he was stable when Helen arrived, and like I said, he will be on his feet within a few days. The Avengers can never thank Spider-Man enough for what he did to take care of one of their teammates. I will now be taking questions. Miss Potts, Cynthia Brewer, New York Times. Is Spider-Man going to be considered an Avenger? One reporter asked. At this stage, we don't know anything about Spider-Man. We just know that he helps out the people of Queens, and last night he helped us. At present, the Avengers have not spoken much about Spider-Man, but I believe he will be a common topic of conversation now that he has played a role in helping Hawkeye. Pepper replied before moving on to the next question. Daniel O'Reilly, Daily News. You said that Hawkeye will make a full recovery. What were the extent of his injuries and how did Spider-Man help? He had a wound on his side, a dislocated shoulder, and a superficial head wound. Pepper explained. Spider-Man was able to stabilize the dislocation and use some of his webs to stop the bleeding. Our medical team would like to thank him for his speedy intervention. Marcus Smith, Daily Bugle. Why would the Avengers willingly work with the local menace that is Spider-Man? The male reporter said. I hate the Daily Bugle. What the heck is their problem? MJ hissed, but Betty shushed her as well. You call Spider-Man a menace. What has he done that actually proves he's a menace? Pepper asked, her gaze turning steely. Last night, he helped in evacuating civilians from a dangerous situation. He was not required to help, but he came anyway. He noticed one of our people was wounded. He responded instantly to help neutralize the threat and save his life. The Avengers have watched the footage of Spider-Man encircling the internet. In none of those videos is he a menace. He rescues cats from trees. I suggest you rethink your stance on Spider-Man. As far as the Avengers are concerned, he has their respect. Dang! Abe said with a whistle. He nudged Peter, who was blushing brilliantly. Look at you go! Winning over the Avengers and Pepper Potts goes to bat for you. We need to put out a statement on Twitter, MJ commented, and Betty nodded. We need to acknowledge their gratitude and thank them for their kind words. Easily done, Betty said. While the boys went back to their building Legos, the girls started talking about Pepper Potts and what they would need to do to continue to improve Spider-Man's image and presence. That afternoon, Peter walked into his apartment and kissed May on the cheek. I'm thinking Thai for dinner. What do you think? May said as she looked up from the newspaper she was reading. Sounds good. What time? Peter asked as he walked into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of orange juice before turning back to Aunt May. 5:30. I'll book us a table. May said, and Peter nodded. He picked up his backpack and walked down into his bedroom. While he had homework to do, he figured it could wait. Peter had managed to get his teachers to increase his work complexity, and while it was certainly more complex, he was still finding it easy. Peter turned on his computer and after opening Netflix, turned on a stand-up comedy show and rested his head on his arms. Dreamscape. Wakey, wakey, sunshine, Reality said, and Peter just rolled his eyes. Both Space and Reality were standing over him with smirks on their faces. Peter had been working hard and integrating with the stones and was getting stronger. He had visited Tony and the other Avengers a few times and was eagerly awaiting the day he could meet them in person. What? Peter asked, and the two stones continued smirking, and Peter slowly stood. That look tells me you are planning on something. Time for your lesson. We have permission from both mind and time to do what we need to do. Space said, and Reality nodded. Today we are paying a visit to the Maximoff siblings, Reality explained. And more than that, you are going to interact with them. We need to start influencing them. It's only a few more weeks before the Avengers head to Sokovia. I don't think I'm ready for that, Peter said softly. Reality's face softened and he threw an arm over Peter's shoulder. You'll do fine. Besides, both Space and I will be with you. Reality said comfortingly. You just need to talk to them and start to plant the seeds of mistrust for Hydra in their heads. Plus, Wanda will be more than likely feeling a connection to you due to our influence. I'll try, Peter said, and both Space and Reality smiled at him. Space waved his hand and the world spun. Soon enough, Peter and the stones were standing in what could only be described as a cell. Two people, teenagers, were sitting on one of the cots. The girl was waving her hands and red tendrils were swirling around her. Okay, Pete, get ready, Reality said. Peter felt something cool drip over his head and closed his eyes. Who are you? A strong male voice demanded. Peter felt control of his body return. He opened his eyes and found himself staring into the eyes of two powerful teenagers. End of chapter 3. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload. Absolutely adoring this. That fight was awesome. I'm loving Peter's dynamic with his team. The Avengers going to bat for him. Pepper showing Mama Bear mode even though she doesn't know it yet. And of course Peter meeting the Maximoff twins. Just, I love the character of Peter Parker. Love him so much. So, yeah, hope you liked this. See you next chapter. Bye! Oh, and I hope you're having a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye again, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals.